let's move over to how you're going to manage your new scope and hardware assets. There's a big debate within a lot of organizations, and in particularly clients when they want to implement hardware asset management, is do they want to do ownership or governance? And they're two very different things. So hardware asset ownership is when IT asset management has full control and responsibilities for all elements of hardware asset management. They're responsible for the governance and the day-to-day controls and processes, responsible for all of the IT asset type strategies, finances, lifecycle management, day-to-day hardware requests, and they're basically ITAM is the one-stop shop for anything related to that hardware asset. That's quite a big task and a big challenge. It gives you more control and it gives you a bigger say, but if you're a smaller team, it may not be the right option for you. So there are obviously pros and cons to everything in life. The pros for hardware asset ownership are full control. ITAM owns everything. You're able to set the strategy, define the refresh cycles. You're responsible for managing the hardware budget, risk reporting, and mitigation plans. I put those as pros because, again, that's where IT asset management can really show the value that it's bringing and really add that extra level of support and service. The cons is a lot of resource and a lot of time to manage this for all IT asset types across the board on a day-to-day basis. There's a big task because if you're responsible for all IT asset types, and you could end up with the responsibility of those pesky consumables as well, because you're doing such a great job. You've got so much control over the asset types, you may end up with consumables. Now, we've mentioned a few times and referenced IT asset type owners, but what exactly are they? Now, these are almost an extension of your IT asset management team, an unofficial extension. These are subject matter experts for a particular IT asset type. They're responsible for the day-to-day management and ownership of IT assets for that specific type, responsible for supporting the ITAM team on the hardware asset management strategy, responsible for updating the AIMDB, and they can also be responsible for the financial management and budget planning and hardware refresh for their particular asset type. It's very similar to software champions. If you have that within your software asset management space, you've got key contacts within your organization who know everything there is to know about an application. They know the licensing, they've got the relationship. It's very similar to that. So examples of IT asset type owners. So you could have your end user teams responsible for all the end user assets, data center and infra responsible for all your data center assets, network asset. It is what it is, right? It says what it does, says on the screen. And I think if you need an example of this to take within your organization, please feel free to screen grab this and take it away and see how you can map your current key stakeholders to being an IT asset type owner for particular asset types within your organization. There, of course, again, if you've got those niche asset types, they're typically business stakeholders that aren't maybe not even in IT, that again use that equipment on a day-to-day basis or are responsible for its ad hoc usage, etc. So get those people involved as well. On the flip side of that, you've got governance, hardware asset governance. Now, this could be a better fit for you if you've got a smaller team, if you're just implementing hardware asset management. This is where the IT asset type owners are actually responsible for that day-to-day management, following the controls and the processes. They're responsible for setting and delivering the strategy for their asset types. They're responsible for updating the AIMDB and CMDB for their asset types. They're held accountable for their BAU documentation and controls by ITAM. So ITAM almost audits their processes and controls for managing their IT asset types to make sure it's aligned with what you want as an IT asset management professional and stakeholder. They run the governance reports, checks of data, processes and ways of working for their asset type. Now, ITAM in this instance will not own the IT asset types. They don't have the responsibility for the physical management of the assets. It may even be that it goes so far as you don't even update the AIMDB, you don't even audit their processes, just completely out of scope. But I would always recommend having as much in scope as you can. And if you've got a smaller team, delegating this out to other stakeholders to support you, and at least having some sort of visibility and some sort of control around these IT asset types. And like I said before, these guys and girls are just an extension of your IT asset management team unofficially, but they are an extension, very much like your software champions would be. Again, if you want to see the differences or you want to take this internally, please feel free to screen grab these slides and take it to your senior management to say, look, I think we should be a governance, an ITAM governance function, here's why, or I think we should be an ownership function and here's why as well. Hopefully these slides will kind of give you some foundation and basis to make that decision. There are, of course, some pros and cons to this. Pros, less time and resources needed to manage these. It becomes a group effort and a group responsibility rather than just on the ITAM. There's less finger pointing. You can focus more on the HAM maturity or ITAM maturity, building the governance processes, controls, work instructions, video guides, whatever it may be. You can also focus on longer term strategy, hardware refresh plans, whatever you need to focus on. This kind of gives you that free time to be able to do more ITAM and HAM high level stuff. And of course, you then get that high level view of the whole estate, so you can review optimization opportunities because your IT asset type owners are taking over the ownership and the controls of building out the processes and updating AMDB and the CMDB. The cons are you have less influence and control on the daily activities. So for me, that's something I really struggle to do. I understand why I need to be able to let go. I still feel like I need that control to be able to validate the justification if we're doing a refresh, if we're buying new equipment for something that I'm not an owner of. I'm an asset. I leave that to the IT asset type owners. I still want to have visibility and get involved in understanding why they're doing a hardware refresh, why they're buying a different model type than what's in a hardware convention. So yeah, it may be a mix of both governance and ownership. You may feel like you need to do that if you're not fully trying to be diplomatic here, if you're not fully confident yet in the process and policies your IT asset type owners have created. But yeah, it's an interesting one. There's a balance. You could either be a full owner, or follow the full governance model, or you can mix and match, take bits from each bit that works well for your organization. And I think finally, yes, something that is well worth mentioning, because I've seen it happen in organizations before, is if you do the governance function, use your IT asset type owners, and you start to look at optimization, there can be clashes and conflicts on savings opportunities. Who can claim the savings? Is it ITAM, or is it the cost center that the IT asset type owner is responsible for? You lose out on some potential cost savings if you follow the governance mantra 100%. And of course, you don't have any authority to physically make the IT asset type owners rectify any gap in their processes or governance models, because you don't own the asset types, you don't pay for them, you don't buy them. So I like a blend, a mixture, a hybrid, if you like, of governance and ownership. I like being really kind of focused on getting all the processes and controls for all asset types from an ITAM point of view, but then letting the IT asset type owners run those processes and having monthly calls with the IT asset type owners. What's been happening? What's the plan for the next month? What do we need to do a hardware refresh from? What do we need to extend or support the maintenance agreements for, etc. So there is a nice balance you can have between ownership and governance. But yeah, it all comes down to money at the end of the day. If you're not the budget type, if you're not the budget owner for that particular IT asset type, it's hard for you to start telling people what they shouldn't be doing, because ultimately they just turn around and say, yeah, but it's our budget, we buy it, who cares if we want to buy this new model, who cares if we want to buy more, it doesn't impact you. And that's quite a hard argument to go against. So that's where, yeah, I prefer to have a central budget, a central pool, and then use IT asset type owners to do some of the governance for me. So how to establish the best option for you? We've mentioned about the size and bandwidth of your ITAM team. If you're a one-person team, this is a fantastic option to be able to get stuff done at a quicker rate than you doing everything yourself. Have a look at what the existing ways of working are. Are key stakeholders already responsible for particular IT asset types? If they're not, are they going to be reciprocative to being given this new responsibility of being an IT asset type owner? Who knows? It depends on stakeholder to stakeholder. Some would love to have that extra responsibility. Some wouldn't, because it's not in their job description. How is the current accuracy of your asset management database, your AMDB? Another interesting one. If it's horrendously bad for your certain asset types, maybe it's not the time to then go and get an IT asset type owner to go and fix all of that. Maybe it's time for ITAM to fix that and then move to a governance model. And you can also then add even hardware champions to manage the workload. So typically I ask the IT asset type owners to nominate a hardware champion. These are the kind of the people that are maybe in the IT asset owners team, for example, like a particular stakeholder, who we can, work with on a day-to-day basis with any daily requests that come in, with any break fix, with any, needing to procure more of that asset type. So yeah, there's no one size fits all. There's no right answer to this. It's what works best for you, your ITAM team, and your organization. So let's do a quick recap then. Ownership means ITAM has full responsibility. Governance is you're almost outsourcing that to your IT asset type owners. Governance is responsible for running the day-to-day, running data, processes, controls, and all of that exciting stuff. Really think about the bandwidth of your team and what your objectives are for ITAM. Is owning all of the asset types going to help you not achieve your roadmap for this year and your strategy, or will it help you achieve that? Make sure that you have a look into that, and make sure you've got a RACI matrix. We'll discuss that in a second, but make sure you've got a RACI matrix so that everyone knows what they're meant to be doing